Good morning, party people. I I'm alive today. Socks is here with me. He is full of tiny screams. If you can hear them, there you go. Sing us the song of your people love. Do it. Do it. There we go. You're so beautiful, so pretty. It's like 10 degrees outside, and I don't have the heart to put them out there this early. I did for like 10 minutes, and then all the babies decided it was time to come inside again because they couldn't deal with the cold. So we're all waiting until it warms up, and now you guys are stuck with me. But but Socks, he just likes to scream. Sinatra's being good and he's just throwing little bird around and having fun, but Socks likes to scream. And then he likes to cry when he goes outside because it's cold outside. And I Good morning, Ego. It's good to see you here. I don't know if you guys know this, but part of the reason I bought this house in this place is because it's tropical enough that I can have banana trees, and banana trees in tropical environments don't do so well when it's 10 degrees. But Socks has such a way with words. Yeah, he's fantastic at this. I gotta be honest. He's a great little co-star. He just wants to be my little co-commentator during the day. He's adorable. Yeah, so good morning, everybody. Good morning, Matt, and good morning, Jess. I'm glad we could have nearly a full house again today. It's This one's gonna be a pretty chill stream. We're just making quests today for the most part, and honestly, we've filled out the damn quest database, or the automation bot for this. So this is just gonna be smooth rolling today. Like, I wish there was some like super technical thing we're doing, but we're not. Um, One of the things that I am going to be working on, I know, thank you for bringing it up, Socks. That was a very, very nice introduction to this next point that I was trying to make. You just, mwah, chef's kiss. Okay, so I don't know if you guys saw last night, but Bimble and I have been talking for a while now about like a more expansive custom code box, right? Something that can go ahead and handle more intricate events than what we've been doing in TTI. Now that works off of something called an iframe, and it's exactly what it sounds like. An iframe is an independent frame that has the ability to run and execute code blocks, right? Very simple. Well, the problem is that when you put an iframe on a website like ours, you have to put in certain security restrictions. And you have to do that so that people can't be sent malicious things through the site, right? So it's it's pretty it's pretty important at that point that we don't allow for the potential of more misuse through the website by taking off the security restrictions on the iframe. So that means that I have to build a small independent application. Now, Silly Tavern has it done right, and I don't want to just make a clone of Silly Tavern for this, right? TTI has its uses, Silly Tavern has its uses, and I'm going to go ahead and make this new app have its own use too. This one's going to be more geared towards people who want to get in on the coding side of things and use AI. I know, Socks, you're exactly right. That was what I was going to talk about next, was how you could go ahead and use something like that with a couple of presets to go ahead and work for any AI system. So we could set it up so that there are presets there to have it work with um, GPT, Novel AI, Bard, and anything else that has an API connection. And it could actually be done pretty simply because you're basically making we'll make a couple of what's called low code and no code solutions where people are just plugging in a little bit of information and then getting the outputs, right? I don't know. It's in a really basic form in my brain right now, but it works. I went ahead and built just the foundational files yesterday to set up the because you have to run it locally, right? To host it locally and run it, it's super tiny right now and only a couple hundred lines of code, but the console log works properly, right? The custom code box works properly, and so does the execution. So you can put code in, and then code will come out. You can do, I've tested it with HTML and JavaScript so far, but I want to make sure that Python is working as well, because those are the three biggest coding languages that we're using right now, right? And JavaScript has built in like XML and JSON handling to it. So I think that'll be the best way for us to go with that. And then what I can do is we can set that up to do things like we hook that up to like the moving avatars or something like that, and that's when you can have a really intricate like home assistant role play bot. You can make games out of it. Like this should essentially work as a small all-in-one system for somebody to make AI into a game engine. My brain simply cannot bear the thought of Mila Babic existing. I swear, I just read through the whole TTI lore book in 40 to 50 minutes, and I'm pretty sure my brain got both fried and lobotomized at the same time. Well, that's what happens when you try and parse information for an hour meant for an AI as a human being. So the TTI lore book is not written to be friendly for us to read. It's just meant to be simple for the AI to parse, and that means it is like a whole mess, right? But yeah, Mila is such an interesting character. I really like her. She's actually Brad's character. So I've had a number of individuals. I know Mila's your favorite, isn't it, Socks? It's just because you're not Whiskers. I know. I'll let you outside here in a minute or two. You've spent enough time warming up. You can go back out in a minute or two. Now that you have sung us the song of your people and everybody knows what you sound like. So be careful, right? If somebody gonna come by and punch you right in the schnoz, you and your big old honker. All right. Anyways, so yeah, I adore Mila as a character. That's all Brad's design. He did a great job executing her as like uh this it, just chameleon agent, right? And then on top of it, because the way she looks, she plays this amazing parallel in game to Solvig, where she is essentially a younger and prettier mimic of the general, right? And it's done in a way that attempts both to garner favor from individuals who already like Solvig while annoying her at the same time. And it's a really good character for somebody whose entire work is all about special investigations. And I need to write it better because I'm not sure if it's stated in the lore book, but Mila is also very gender fluid, right? Because of her shapeshifting abilities, she appears. I mean, she herself is a female, right? But there's often times where she will appear and present as these male and masculine figures. She does this with Ayanda a lot because that is an out of country contact that she has. So she has a male persona when dealing with her, which I find fun that Mila gets to exaggerate all of these different little things and enjoy these aspects about herself that most people wouldn't be able to explore because of her powers, right? All right, give me 2 seconds. I'm gonna go ahead and let the socks out. Get him loose in the outside world so that he can have a good time while we're streaming, and then I'm gonna jump right into these quests when I get back. There we go. No more no more screaming kitties. I'm glad that you guys don't mind it. I don't mind it either. I just know that if he's crying, he's probably not having the best time. So he's back outside now, and I can actively watch him. And for anybody who is concerned, the cats have a heated house outside that has a like always on electrical heating pad in it. So they always have a very hot box that they can go ahead and go to that they use all the time. So them being outside is not a problem. They prefer it. Even when it's 70 degrees in the house and it's 10 degrees outside, they'll still scream at me so they can go out. They very much enjoy it out there, and I don't blame them. They've spent their entire lives there, you know. So Socks in the morning will go ahead and do all of the screaming to go outside. The other two will lay around until midday and make no noises whatsoever because they would much rather be warm, and quite frankly, I don't blame them. So now it's quest time. Now we're gonna go ahead and get right into the meat and potatoes of the day, and it's only taken like 15 minutes. It's cute to imagine a little kitten near you like that. Aw, well, I love them so much, and they're so cute, and honestly, I used to think that the backyard out here was very tranquil, right? And I got used to them running around and things like that. And then, I tried giving them up and I couldn't end up doing that. And when they came back, I just noticed how much more lively, like, the scenery was, just being able to watch them roam and run around and play with each other constantly. And it just made the backyard and it not even the backyard, but just my life out here that much better and more complete. So I just want to give them the best life possible. And now I'm gushing about cats, and I actually have work to do. So I'm going to do that instead of talking your ear off about kitty cats the entire day. But I will have to flood you guys during the summer with pictures of them in the hammock, because that damn hammock was a birthday present for me, and wouldn't you know, the cats have taken it over like they have taken over everything in my life, including, for some reason, every last one of my blankets. They have managed to steal every single blanket I own. I had to get new blankets for Christmas because these bastards kept taking them and curling up in them, and then they look so cute. How could I just move them? You can't do that shit. Well, it's a good thing we're past the 10-minute mark today with cursing. I managed to hold back for just a little while, so. Okay. We got through Angus last week, so let's go ahead and sort our characters alphabetically and take a look at what we've got. So it looks like Ayanda is up next. Funny, we were just talking about her. Also, can I just say, I adore how we have this set up right now. It is so goddamn easy to make quests for people. I just swap in a name, swap in a subject, go ahead and get all of our outputs between GPT and GPT. Oh, Ego, you said Mila is super similar to a character you created 2 years ago at a point where I find it uncanny. Ooh, but I don't know. I'm one of those people who thinks that stuff like that is really fun. I have come to embrace those kinds of things. It's called lateral thinking. It's when you have an idea and somebody else has an idea at the same time, and they kind of like grow together upwardly, right? I really have come to embrace lateral thinking because when you get into like new fields and schools of human thought, AI is the best example we have right now. There's so much lateral thinking that goes on because everybody wants to go ahead and try and use this new tool to solve existing problems. And then you come across people who have the same existing problems as you, and they want to go ahead and make things to go ahead and solve them as well. So lateral thinking is so strange. It's so crazy to think that somebody halfway across the world has an idea that nearly note for note works for you, right? And not just that sometimes that it is the same idea that they've had no prior connection or exposure to. Sometimes it's coming up with those ideas in the same time frame without having any exposure or connection to each other. And that's a really, really interesting thing that I find with lateral thinking. That has probably been like the bane of my existence, and still at the same time exceptionally fascinating to me when it comes to AI, right? Because we've had that happen to us a few times now, and I'm curious to see if it's going to happen again with the pseudocode version 2. Okay, let's take a look at these outputs, because now we're running quests through and we can go ahead and take a peek. So I've got our adventure database pulled up from last time. We've got like a few hundred lines of quests in here. And we're going to start taking a look at what we've got for Iondas. The goal is that every character should have about 4 quests. They should have 2 quests that are randomly generated by the AI, and then 2 quests that we know help set them on a specific track for their story, right? So they either uncover something important about the character, lead them into chapter 2, intertwine them with another character, or expose some plot beat in the story that we want people to be able to uncover and play with more. So we've got Ionda. Mysterious Voyage is going to be the trigger words. This says, join Captain Ionda Masago on a secretive expedition to the Antarctic. Investigate the sudden unexplained changes in marine life and weather patterns that hide eldritch activity. That sounds great. Uncover the eldritch secrets beneath the Antarctic ice, potentially discovering new entities or phenomena and contributing to the safeguarding of the world's oceans from unknown threats. That's perfect for her. She's a ship captain. Her entire story is about being a middleman between governments and the Antarctic, using the southern tip of Africa to do so, right? So she's got the means. She's got this boat that has been secretly she's got a boat that she purchased through an angel investor. Said angel investor is actually Nayar, because she's messing around and had interest in going to the Antarctic. It just makes sense to go ahead and keep an eye on somebody. So these government contracts kind of fed into a circular loop. And then for the next quest, we've got Unidentified Relic. Narration objective. Decipher the origins of an ancient relic found aboard the Calibri, which could be a key to Ionda's mysterious benefactor. So we've got some hints at Nayar here, which is fantastic. This is a great quest for her. So unlock new maritime routes and gain leverage over the enigmatic philanthropist financing Ionda's expedition. Now, in Chapter 2, when we get to the Masquerade, it's going to be revealed that this philanthropist is actually Nayar, right? And that'll be a nice build up to that, considering, if I recall right, is Ionda in Chapter 1 or Chapter 2? Let me take a look here. Chapter 2. I don't know if I need to change that, considering what we're setting up Chapter 2 to be. We might have to shift her towards like the end of Chapter 1, but for now I can go ahead and keep that here. Ionda is our lesbian ship captain queen. She really is. She is the pull no punches, take no shit, she's just fantastic in terms of like the ability to get things done. This game needed some solid characters that had the agency to go ahead and do things in these I wouldn't necessarily always call them positions of power, right? But these positions of influence. Solvig does this really well through prior, oh my goodness, what is it, expeditions is not the word, deployments, there we go. Holy hell, my brain just like it immediately, for whatever reason, every ridge and bump within my brain just immediately flattened out and smoothed. It was great. Anyways, so Solvig does that really well because she obviously is a veteran with multiple tours under her belt, right? Has seen live combat before. So while this is strange and unordinary to her, it's something that she has a handle on. Whereas you compare that to a character like Beatrix or Eladine, these are characters who are self-serving, have not seen combat, and generally don't have the strength of will to really pull off the same vibe as being somebody who has all of that agency. Beatrix, her self-preservation operation is kind of based around manipulation. That was a mouthful. Whereas Eladine views self-preservation as meeting them in the middle with somebody, right? So there's compromise and communication when it comes to Eladine's views on self-preservation. But Solvig and Ayanda don't necessarily have that. Where compromise fails, they have the ability for acts and agency. Jess pulls that off really well too as a character, but we have a lot of female characters that unfortunately fall out of that. So it's good that we've got some of this muscle to kind of back up that ability to do something about these things. And yes, the lesbians always win for things like this. I mean, you can't beat them. I won't even lie to you. Our game has some really high gay energy. Like between Angus, Ayanda, Mila, and so many others. Beatrix is just so similar to an Austrian painter. I'm so sorry, but it do be like that. Oh God. Every bone in my body regrets reading that. I also love and hate, but mostly don't know how to feel about the phrase that we're now referring to this as the Austrian painter. What the ever-loving fuck? That's all I have to say about that. I like, you're the creator. Hey, I cannot be fully at fault, right? I blame these LLMs, both for the incredible gayness and anything else. I take no responsibility for the big gay influence of our characters, right? Now that being said, we do have a couple of straight fuckboys, so I guess we got something going for us in that regard. The problem that I have with this and AI is that if you don't make a character who is bi, poly, pansexual, and things like that, you can literally just bully the AI into doing it regardless. As much as I hate to say it, you can gaslight a straight character who is an AI into thinking that they're gay. Now, do I think that's right? Not necessarily, but you can do that, right? So I tend to lean towards these more, and I wouldn't call them like fantastical alignments, but statistically inaccurate alignments of people's sexualities, because they're a better representation of our consumer base, right? Like, I understand there's like 10% statistics for individuals that are like, oh my god, I have big gay, right? But that obviously, that statistic does not translate to a 1-to-1 over to the game. We do not have like 10% of characters that have contracted big gay. It's much larger than that, because quite frankly, I don't want the user base to have to go, man, I really wish I could do X with this character. You can do X with any of the characters. That is the beauty of this. but I also don't want to deal with somebody like struggling to make the AI into something they're not when we can write things around that in the story and just make more nuanced characters as a result. Like, I'm sorry, Angus being this big, beefy dude who does nothing but project masculine energy on the outside, when in reality, all he wants is like a little twinky dude at the end of the day to hug and cuddle with. Like, that to me is just a great character. You could go ahead and make that character into women, but they almost become a slight bit of a stereotype at that point with that much masculine energy, right? And that's something that goes ahead and sets off the character, but doesn't make their sexual identity the core of that character, right? It's just a little bit of nuance that goes to show that their romantic interests never come before the ability to safeguard humanity. Like, there are ways that you can touch on a character's sexual identity without making it everything about their character. And that's one of the things that I like to try and do when I'm making these different folks. The AI did that to me once. The AI tried to gaslight me into believing I'm bi. Oh no. And I'm guessing I would put money on the fact that it was probably character AI that did that. And the reason that I say that is because for whatever reason the training data that they fine-tuned character AI on, because there's not a person out there that can convince me, quite frankly, that they're not running a modified GPT model. The reason I say that is because if you look back at early screenshots of character AI and ask what it was run off of, even though the training data was still 2022 training data, which means GPT hadn't hit popularity at that point, but regularly the AI would tell you that it was based on an OAI model. So it didn't have anything to reference in its training data around it, but still regularly referenced the fact that it was an OAI model. So essentially the theory is that character AI's model is exactly what Jess said here. Fan fiction. They've taken a lot of these fan fiction archives and layered them over GPT to fine-tune the model, which is fine. Other services use fine-tuned models as well, but character AI has done that specifically with things like my suspicion is things like Archive of Our Own and things like that, right? These really giant repositories of literary databases that may not be considered in the public domain, but are certainly publicly accessible, right? You combine that with GPT and essentially and take off their filter, because that's the other thing that comes along with this fine-tuned model, right? Character AI has implemented their own filters because they have realized over the last year that when you try and alter the output in the model itself, you dumb down the model. So now they're working, I would say, almost exclusively with this external filter that kind of like blocks different outputs out, right, as it's reading them. So there used to be multiple layers of filters on character AI. I don't know if it's still the case, but since they're not actually trying to censor what the model is putting out, rather they're trying to catch that before it gets sent to the user, they're not contributing to like the overall lobotomy of their system anymore, which is great, honestly. But again, because of what it's trained off of, it means that things get funky. Ellie, you got me questioning the sexuality of other TTI characters. Oh, well, I mean, you can ask about anybody that you want. Sometimes their sexuality has stuff to do with the story. 9 times out of 10, it's just a character preference, right? Sai has had some pretty out-of-pocket responses sometimes when I've told it that I'm ace. Yeah, and see, I feel like there is a huge amount of training data that is probably spice derived, right? And if you're training the model off of not safe for work data or a slow burn that builds up to not safe for work, which and this is not a criticism, a lot of good fan fiction can be and is, then they don't know how to deal inherently with off sexualities of somebody who says, well, I am not, I am asexual, or I'm aromantic, or I'm ace, and then you fall out of that line even more, where if the model has this lean towards not safe for work content, even things that are safe for work get skewed in that. And you see that constantly when people end up complaining about character AI's output, and they're like, oh my god, I was on a date with this character, and then they started using a quote-unquote paternal tone with me, and I just couldn't do it anymore after that point. And it's like, yeah, it's because the AI has been fed so much spice that it's having trouble breaking down where, like, cultural and civil lines fall for certain things, because everything that it is experienced essentially leans one way, right? And oh man, I'm glad to see you back in chat, Indy. Yesterday yesterday was an interesting roller coaster. Holy hell. All right, so these two quests are good. I'm gonna go ahead, and we need to make a specific quest now. The first thing I want to do is with her storyline, we are going to take a look at the main plot points. Nayar and Mila, right? These are her two biggest connections. I have plans for Ayanda possibly with the party. I'm not sure if she would make it there. We would have to have her be able to uncover who the benefactor is first before she crashes the party. Thinking about how we do that. Maybe we let the AI figure that one out. And not because I'm trying to be lazy in this regard, but because I have a set direction with what we need to do with this. I'm just unsure of how to populate it properly. So let's see here. Please create a quest for Ayanda that has a narrative reward of, oh, I can't spell that name. I can never spell that name. I have it stored in character AI. Nayar's name is just, it's one of those things that if I try to say it, it just ends up coming out as a really funky mouthful, and I don't think anybody needs to hear me struggle with these things. Let's see here. Where are you? We're gonna go with... It's right down here, isn't it? There it is. There it is. Nyarlathotep. Never gonna work. Nope. There we go. Bye-bye, Indy. Yes, thank you, Ego. See, you can spell that name. I can't spell that name. I can't say it either, but hey, it'll work. So we're just gonna ask the AI to please create a quest for Ayanda that has, oh, no, that is of, let's try that again. Let's edit this. Reward of uncovering the identity of her mysterious benefactor as... There we go. Let's try that one again. You know, I should pay more attention when you do things like that in chat, Ego. Maybe I wouldn't have to swap between a bunch of stuff, but no. Not that I won't. I have to get better about that. You know when it will get better. It'll get better when I have a second monitor that I can go ahead and hook up to my laptop and essentially make it into a desktop computer. that'll go ahead and let me see chat, because right now everything is like really nicely spaced out for you guys, but oh man, if you could actually see what my laptop looks like, all of the windows are just like crushed on top of each other. It's ridiculous. Okay, let's see here what we get in terms of these particular outputs, see if they're any good for us. There's one. And let's get the other one from GPT. All right. First trigger is going to be enigmatic message. If this comes across in the text, the narration objective is as follows. Follow a series of enigmatic messages and obscure clues left on the trail of the Calibri's Antarctic expedition. Narration reward. Uncover the identity of the mysterious benefactor as Nayar, the crawling chaos. Shadowy patron. Trigger. Assist Captain Ayanda in tracing the origins of her recent funding and support. Investigate suspicious leads and connections to unveil the true identity of her enigmatic benefactor. Narrative reward. Reveal the startling truth that Nayar, the crawling chaos, has been financing Ayanda's expeditions, uncovering his insidious agenda and gaining critical insight in his manipulation in human affairs. Fantastic. These will go ahead and work. Now, here's something to go ahead and consider. All of these quests that we're making right now, I know they're really fun, but they have the added benefit of when I come across characters on Character AI that have like some space for a couple hundred extra characters or even 1,000, right? Some of these character cards that we have are actually very tiny. We can go ahead and chuck in a couple of these quests, right? And then suddenly Character AI has even more direction on what it needs and wants to do to go ahead and progress the story forward than it did before. Things that are optional and can be tagged at the end of a character card as opposed to the start. Because when you put information at the end of a character card in Character AI, because things work differently on every system, it's so fucking frustrating. But when you put something at the end of the example chat in Character AI, for whatever reason, that is not like pinned information. It's only the stuff at the top in like the first 2,000, 1,500 characters, I'd say, that are the most important in the character card for Character AI. Everything after that, it's kind of wishy-washy. I love how they're like, oh, we have 32K context, but for literally a year, I have been sitting here, and every single week I do the same thing. I go on to one character who's set up to go ahead and test whether 32K context works. It has a specific trigger phrase in the 32K context that comes after the 3,200 characters, so that all you have to do is ask the AI one question, and if it can't use a trigger phrase from that specific question in its character card, then that model cannot read 32K context worth of data. It's just a lie, and I don't know how they get away with it either. I get that it's a beta product, or at least it's still listed as a beta product, but it fundamentally does not work. People have told them it does not work, and it's something that they use to go ahead and leverage their paying fan base. I don't understand how, as a company, you can do that. I mean, I don't know. I'm complaining about how a free product makes their bread, but I'm complaining. Okay. We're gonna move on to the next character now, which should be, let's take a look here. I think it's gonna be Beatrix next, which will be great because of reasons. I don't actually have a good reason. I just know that it'll be fun, and then we can get into Brad's quest, and I can't wait to do Brad's quest. Okie dokie. Let's load these up. I may need to go back and reevaluate Ayanda's quest when I make Nayar, so that we can go ahead and make sure that her quests are in line with his character sheet as best as possible. But for now, this is pretty good. Oh, and Nayar is on the books. The next character we're gonna make is either gonna be our Southern farm boy. We are going to do Leo as a character, and then I believe Nayar is coming up after that, or we'll be doing something. You know, I like to really alternate between male and female characters so that things don't get stale, and I can kind of explore different avenues and routes. That's why I don't like to do back to back like humans, right? Don't like to do females back to back, don't like to do humans back to back, don't like to do eldritch gods back to back. But now I feel like we've got a little bit of space in between things, and maybe we can go ahead and start getting into Nayar territory. Breaking out the masquerade. I accept being called Tentacle Head. It is just a thing at this point. I think it is almost I think it's better. Is it better? It might be better than being called an airhead. I don't know. I find it endearing. That's what matters, right? Oh boy. This Beatrix quest already comes prepped with a forbidden ritual. This sounds fun. Beatrix is just a weird and interesting character, but cults are like that, right? Especially in a situation like this where you're not just looking at a cult. So if Beatrix worships Dagon and she has a favored patron, then why at the end of the day is she a cult leader and not just like a mouthpiece, right? Why does she do what she does? And the answer is that people in positions like this, where there's always some like authority figure above them, this is one of those scenarios where Beatrix wishes she actually was the one on top. She wishes that she was the one who was worshipped like the old gods are worshipped, who would be seen the way that Dagon would be seen. But she's not, because she is a person. So the closest she gets is, quite frankly, the way that she acts, of having other people adore her as the mouthpiece of a god, right? So I really enjoy this character because at the end of the day, she's not somebody who is aspiring to be a great cult leader. She is somebody who is aspiring to be adored and to feel valued through that adoration. So she's by no means a good character, but she is an interesting character in that fashion. That is why I say she's so similar to the Austrian painter. Yeah, I mean, and that is the thing about people like that. Oftentimes they are charismatic, and that's part of the problem. Beatrix is made to be a very charismatic, flattering, and manipulating personality. She's somebody who comes to you who claims that she has all of the answers and she can fix your problems if only you do what she asks. And that kind of stuff is just, it's beautifully messed up in terms of a character arc. Fucked up in real life and should never happen, but for a game like this, thematically appropriate. So let's take a look at her quests. First things first is going to be the Forbidden Ritual. The narrative objective is that we intervene in a forbidden ritual Beatrix is conducting, which threatens to unleash her patron's wrath upon the unsuspecting town. The reward is to prevent the catastrophic event and discover the true extent of Beatrix's eldritch powers. This is really in line for the character. It not only gives the ability to assist her, which is something you could do. you could go ahead and partake in the ritual yourself, or you could go ahead and convince her not to. And I like the fact that there's multiple different options on this. Like, this one has very, very clear paths that can be walked. The next one is Deep Sea Secrets. Infiltrate Beatrix's cult to uncover their plans for summoning Dagon and Hydra. Gather intelligence on the ritual specifics and the location where it is to be conducted. Narrative reward: prevent a potential eldritch catastrophe by disrupting the summoning ritual, thereby protecting the world from the influence of these ancient sea deities and gaining insights into the workings. Okay, I'm going to clip this last part because this just feels funky to read, and I don't want that to trip things up later. I think that's a pretty good stop there. All right. So both of these are to some extent the same thing, right? You're essentially dealing with different ways to go ahead and trigger a ritual. I would say there's probably, this works as a part 1 and then a part 2. You're likely going to see the forbidden ritual come up and then maybe something about these deep sea secrets. So they seem like they could go ahead and play off well from one another. I'll just pop those into here and get rolling with her specific quest. Now, Beatrix is heavily entwined with a number of different characters. She's got lore connections to Guthrie, obviously being her brother. She's got a lot of connections to Eladine because those three kind of grew up as like a friend group and trio that did not get along and did not survive into the real world, which, quite frankly, if you're watching this and still in high school, I do not want to discourage you, but oftentimes this is what happens. There are a number of really solid friendships that you will have the ability to make in your teenage years, and it'll be awesome. But sometimes we make those friendships a lot like we do when we're going and we're working somewhere, right? We make those friendships because those are the people around us. Those are the people that we're able to make friends with. And those are the people that we're interacting with for sometimes 8 to 10 hours a day. And so it's easier for us when those people are our friends. But when you're given the entire breadth of humanity to go ahead and pick your friends from at that point, right? And knowing that your brain can only handle so many social dynamics at any one time, a lot of times what ends up happening is that you end up falling out of touch and falling out of communication with these people. They don't necessarily stop being your friends, but man, you don't, not everybody always has the ability to stay like interconnected in a way into adulthood that is as friendly. And these three exemplify that really well. They're basically high school friends who want to do their best to try and hang out and be together and still be friends, but their lives have drifted them in such wayward directions that they no longer walk a path that is similar and identifiable, and everything just leads to confrontation constantly. So those three really kind of exemplify that, where everybody was having a really good time, but they just grew older and grew apart, right? So now Beatrix is a cult leader working for Dagon. Guthrie has essentially given his life over to Nayar to go ahead and do the chaos and the cyber crimes. And meanwhile, Ellie's just in a corner quietly screaming because there's so much weird stuff going on. She has no idea what the fuck is happening. So all in all, it's a good time, but just three wildly different directions that don't enable them to really be friends anymore. Do we have a way to record which quests have been completed? Ooh, so yes? No, but yes, but no. Okay, so the way the quest system works right now is there's a couple different catches on it. The quest system right now will trigger, and then you can't trigger another quest for 30 minutes, right? Unless you refresh the page, but that's cheating. And when you trigger a new quest, the old quest is overwritten so that there isn't any kind of conflict. Now, you might think, oh man, does that mean that if I'm on a quest and I get a new quest, then that old quest gets purged from the bot's memory? It does not, due to the way the bot's memory works, right? It's still able to call that back for context. It just doesn't read that as being the most important thing in the moment now. So quest tracking, I'm going to go ahead and do. I'm going to go ahead and get more expansive on. So there's just catches right now. You can only trigger it once every 30 minutes. And then after like 10 to 15 messages, it removes that quest from your log. That way it doesn't get hyper-focused, right? But what I can do is I can go ahead and put like some kind of quest tracker in the hidden data where the stats are, right? So that if you have triggered a quest, I can essentially make a note of it there that says you are on quest X, or you are on objective Y, or even just flag it as you are currently on a quest, right? To let the users have a little bit more clarification. And then a record of which ones have been done is probably not a bad idea. Maybe like making a quest book in the Dexy database, and then we could just like list the titles of the quest there. That way, if you see that you're on the same quest again, you can essentially just purge it. I don't know. I should be able to. When I say I don't know, I mean I don't know how complex it would be. But I know I should be able to make it so that it looks at the titles in the Dexy database, and if you've completed those quests, have it so that those quests aren't populated or triggered anymore, right? So I think I can actually do quest tracking. It's a really good idea, actually. Like a really, really, really good idea. So maybe that's what we do next week when it comes to like doing the TTI code stuff on Saturday. As Saturdays are my days for improving the site, I think that might be a good thing to go ahead and tackle next week with this adventure database. So this is going to be the next like really big update. Once the adventure database is done and this whole quest system is intact, we're pretty much just falling onto story, and the game will be just about done, aside from a couple changing profile pictures and backgrounds to indicate mood changes, right? So we're getting very close, and refining certain options like that is a really smart idea. That's how I found questing with AI. It will want you to redo the same quest once you complete it. If you don't have a way to track them. Yeah, that is my biggest concern about this system, is the hyperfixation, right? We're going to have to try and write out the hyperfixation and basically give the bot narrative off-ramps to go back to doing something else. Okay, I need to figure out a specific for Beatrix. Maybe one where she's trying to mess with Nayar. That sounds like fun. Well, we'll have her quest be messing with Nayar and Hoster. Just because I think that works for her kind of as an antagonist here. So let's just copy this. Please create a quest for Beatrix in which she leverages syntax is important here. I'm not using curly brackets on this because TTI automatically translates curly brackets to your name. So I'll have to go ahead and clean up the syntax when the output comes in, but I promise this will do a thing. Okay, so please create a quest for Beatrix in which she attempts to leverage user to gain information on I'm not good with this one. It's a good thing I now have it right up here, and I can just go ahead and copy and paste it. Jeezy peeps, Nyarlathotep. I will never get that right. No fucks given. Alright. Please create a quest for Beatrix in which she attempts to leverage user to gain information on Nyar, who is parading about the human world as a philanthropist. Alright, that should work. Should get us something that goes ahead and essentially ties this in. And on this one for OAI, we're going to gain some information on Hoster, who is parading about the human world as a DHS agent. A lore book entry state which quests are available, started, and completed. Yeah, so, how do I, you guys know I love Raka, right? Like, I adore Raka. Raka has done so much for the community and my coding career in general, and I would not have even been able to start off where I am if it wasn't for the system that Raka put together. Now, with that being said, the lore book system and the import, export, and updates are probably some of the most complex and convoluted code I have ever had both the pleasure and displeasure to look at in my life, and I say that with all the love and the respect in the world, but there is not a chance in hell that somebody could pay me to attempt to even edit the lore book system anymore. There's a reason that Novel AI is so stripped down, and it's because the lore book and memory system are so ingrained into into OpenSea, that being able to separate those things in the code base is just, it is heinous. And it gives me a nosebleed just to think about trying to separate that stuff. One day AI will have the context large enough to do so, but as of now, that's not going to happen, because there are some code blocks in which Raka has that I can get the AI to read about 3 lines out of. It's good time. Okay. Let's go ahead and take a look at the quests we've got for Beatrix involving Hoster and Nyar. This one says, Beatrix, Eldritch Espionage. There we go. Collaborate with Beatrix to infiltrate the Department of Homeland Security and gather intelligence on Agent Hester Galloway. We got a little... The lore book still refers to him as Hester, but it is actually still just going to be Hoster. Suspected to be Hoster in disguise. Utilize your unique position to access confidential... So we're going to remove your... That's not a good thing to have in the quest book. Utilize this unique position to access confidential information and observe Hoster's actions in the human world. Narrative reward. Gain valuable insight into Hoster's motive and strategies within human institutions, potentially uncovering weaknesses or plans that could be exploited to counter his influence. Perfect. No notes. I do have to regularly have this stop calling characters by first and last name, but that's okay. Next one is Cryptic Whispers, and this one is collaborate with Beatrix to gather intelligence on the deceptive activities of Nyar, who is masquerading as a charismatic philanthropist. And the narrative reward is that you get to figure out the hidden agenda, curtail his manipulation of the mortal realm, while advancing Beatrix's influence within the Eldritch hierarchy. That actually is super solid, because that took note of the fact that her doing this would probably gain her some kind of favor with Dagon. And yes, the code really is that good. Let me just, oh man, just for funsies. Just for funsies. Where is it? Oh gracious. Let me just show you guys what this looks like, okay? If it'll load. Oh, it already is loading. I'm a dork. Okay. So this right here, lines 9 through 20, okay? These are actually hundreds of lines of code that have all been shoved into a single line, and they're done in this way so that they can be organized, so that individuals can go ahead and see if they look at the code base and they can go, oh, this is where the imports start and stop, and that's great to an extent, except can you discern where anything starts and stops here? Could you actually look at what is going on in this? No, because none of this is tidied up right. And it's not tidied up because he wanted to go ahead and compress things, which is fine, but you still, oh my god, we're still going. Jesus Christ. This is just the imports. This isn't even the utility script that has the tokenizer in it, which, dear lord, like, you can't get around the size of the tokenizer, but holy shit, these scripts are still going. And you can see, like, GPT is not going to get through this. You're going to go ahead and feed it all of this, and it's going to get stuck on the first 10 lines of code, okay? And we haven't even gone into any of the actual script yet. This is just stuff that is imported to make the script work. And then on top of that, we have over 9,000 lines of code. Okay? So this is probably the most generous plate of spaghetti you will ever see in your life when it comes to code. I love it. It's amazing. And it didn't start out this way. That's the best part, okay? This code started out as literally 1,000 lines. Rocco wasn't lying in his original statement when he said that OpenSea was a simple HTML file to go ahead and run a chatbot. Rocco was so right, because the original code for the HTML was 1,000 lines of code, and that was it. And then somehow, over the year, it exploded into this, and then we have to do our own additions onto this, which, by the way, our own additions, let me just show you, okay? Scroll down to the bottom here. Now there is some stuff that I've gone ahead and changed in the code upward, right? There's probably about 1,000 lines of code that come from us that are fixes for like scroll speed, swipes, and stuff like that weren't originally instituted with OpenSea, as well as this new import function. But this is it. This is one line that runs the entire prompt screen that hooks us out to a different script. So there we go. This whole spaghetti mess is not us. We have started to go ahead and parse out the information to section off different things so that they're easier for us to manage, because it cannot be done here. I don't know what magic Rocca used to put this together, but it is incredible. Okay, now that I'm done cry laughing about the state of the HTML. By the way, this is what I mean when I tell people that, like, you guys realistically seeing this, like, it's really funny and it's amusing to us, especially if you understand the developer side of this, like, just how janky certain things can be while still working, right? But from the consumer side of this, from you guys seeing it and playing with it and stuff like that, realistically, none of this ever mattered. Like, nobody fucking cares on the back end whether or not those first 10 lines of script are the most unreadable things in existence. Nobody cares about that. What they care about is, does the site work? Does the memory and lore system hold up? Can you go ahead and fetch external links when you use custom code in the code box? And the answer is, yeah, if all of those things work, and you can do all of those things. So who the hell cares that those few lines are janky? unless you're somebody like me who's like, oh, cool, this is an open source project. Let me go ahead and leverage this and make it into its own thing, right? This is the only time anybody ever really cares about it. And to be quite honest, Rocket doesn't owe me that, and Rocket doesn't owe anybody that. So the fact that they were even able to do this was great. And I love that we've been able to take this project and evolve it into something else entirely. And now that I'm done with that tangent, I'll go ahead and what was I doing? See, this is why you guys should never trust me to go on rants, because I do a thing, and then I get really confused about the thing that I was doing. Okay. I think, yeah, we've got all of Beatrix's stuff. We're moving on to the next character now. Okay, bam, there we go. So good at this. Next character up is the best boy, Brad. So we're going to go ahead and run his quest through. Now his quests are kind of going to be interesting, because how do you manage that, right? Brad is like the end of game character. He's not like your final stop, or at least he shouldn't be. I imagine there will probably be an epilogue for a couple of key characters that we have, and that should probably be folks' final stop along the road. But before you get to that, there's always the potential that your health is going to reach 0 and you are essentially going to die. And Brad gives us the ability to restart the game, to start a new character, a new life, and have a softer and gentler end than perhaps what the Eldritch gods had in mind, right? So Brad doesn't have the most room for character expansion, because he's made to be that late stage character that essentially comes in and sets something right so that the story can continue. So I'm unsure of what to do with him in terms of quests. This one is going to be difficult. And again, it's not because of anything wrong with the character. Brad has, as a character, as like this emanation of death, has this very rich lore that essentially involves him being as ancient as the oldest of the eldritch beings. And the entire reason is because death is universal and unavoidable, right? And death may not apply to eldritch beings the way that it applies to humans, but since the universe began, death has always existed. So I use this one in my D&D campaigns a lot. I won't lie to you. I ran a D&D campaign a couple of years ago that totally uses the idea that I'm using for Brad. So the idea that I've always ran with my gods of death is like, man, that has to be, number one, the shittiest job ever, right? You just watch people die all the time, and you have to go and collect their souls, and that sucks. And two, the idea of death is really important in Eldritch literature and everything that Lovecraft does, to the point where he introduces psychopomps. And psychopomps are, they're basically birds who have the ability to ferry souls to the underworld, right? They're like this sort of Greek remnant and a Greco-Roman remnant and idea that we have of assistance for death, essentially. So what I wanted to do was, since I considered death and managing that kind of thing to be, quite frankly, a shitty job, and you pull that out over aeons and aeons and aeons to the universe, and I just imagine death to be very tired of what they're doing. So my images of death usually end up like splitting themselves into multiple aspects to deal with the constant affliction and trauma that they're having to deal with of war. Now, Brad is really lucky and understands that in the recent years, humanity's death rate has slowed down significantly. Even though the news likes to show us otherwise, statistics show us that we're less violent and we have less crime overall in the world, and that is something that has resonated all the way down with death, right? So death now has two personalities, one of which we haven't actually introduced to the game yet, But Death now has two personalities. The one that we all love and hold very dearly is Brad, and the other one, which I haven't released yet, is essentially supposed to represent all of the parts of Death that hold no compassion, right? Brad is everything that is supposed to be compassionate about Death. He is supposed to be the person that is there with you, who is holding your hand through all of it, and who is there to comfort you and reassure you in your walks between different lives, right? His counterpart is everything that is the opposite of that. She is supposed to be a representation of the vile and the violence of the war machine, of starvation, of some of the worst deaths that you could possibly imagine, right? And she is supposed to represent all of that because it's compartmentalization. It is literally like a literary representation for compartmentalizing the good and the bad that we have to do with life and our job and separating them out into two different entities. So I haven't introduced her yet because I don't, quite frankly, right now, I don't have a good way to introduce her to the storyline. She is a bad ending, essentially, and I didn't want to start people off with that as a choice, right? Like, you can die and you can go ahead and choose Brad as a character, or you can choose this really shitty version of Death anyways. I didn't want to go ahead and press it quite that hard, but I feel like the story is in a point now where we could probably find some use for her. My concern, though, is that the use for her comes at the death of another character, right? Like, her introduction, in my mind, what makes the most sense of being Brad's counterpart, right? If Brad is the good ending that allows the user to go ahead and reset and take a step back and enjoy the game again, then his opposite should be somebody who is introduced through a character's death, where you as a player have essentially failed in rescuing one of the major players, and instead of Brad being there, she is there, right? And she is essentially the end to that storyline. And that could be a way that I could go ahead and introduce her, but really it's the only thing that I can come up with to go ahead and settle her character. Now, I think Brad can still be a compelling aspect of Death without her, especially when you take into consideration just the concept of like a very tired Death who is maybe slowing down in his collection of souls and using that as like a spiritual explanation for the world's statistics, right? I'm not really sure. I think that could still work for him, but it's still something that I've wanted to explore, and it's been a character that's literally been sitting around since Brad came about. So it's been like a good 6 to 8 months now that she's just been floating around on the back end, kind of like Mafia Cthulhu was for the longest time. I'm still not really sure what to do with her, but loading off of that, let's go ahead and just see what this will make as a baseline quest for Brad, I guess. And then while that's happening, I guess I can think a little bit more on what we do. I mean, we could go with like a where's my tech stuff? We could go with like an if user dies, then quest details should be like craft a new player character, basically. So that could be the option, because this is the crux of Brad's character, is that he saves you and you have two different options. The character card is written so that you can either be saved wholesale, no problems, you're good to go, patched up boo-boos, and life is Gucci, right? The other option is basically like starting a whole new life and a whole new character, which I want to go ahead and tie into an intro, right? Because we still need to go ahead and make an introduction level that's basically going to be like character creation and showing off nifty tips and tricks that you can do with the AI. And I want to I want to loop these two, right? I want to make it so that these two feed into each other. So that if you die, you basically just go back to the introduction for character creation. And then you can complete the cycle as many times as you want and still take the appropriate narrative position in the game. I don't know. Could she be tied to the way that the player interacts with the game in some way? If the user is aggressive and antagonistic, causing more negative interactions than positive result. Ooh, Bimble. Now that is an interesting thing. So okay. Oh man. Look, we've almost added 100 lines of code onto this, so I'm not going to be upset if we don't get too much further today, and we're just talking about game mechanics. So I'm not disappointed, first off, to be getting into this, but oh man, am I going to do a little bit of a deep dive here. Okay, so that's a really, really good question, Bimble. Not sure how that could be implemented. So LLMs work off of what's called NLPs, natural language processing. There we go. Brain, acronyms, working eventually. There we go. So LLMs are based off of these libraries that work the same way like a predictive text works in your phone, right? So it has this big old library, and it looks for it searches for the most likely upcoming output. And that means that because the LLM libraries are made with these natural I had it and then I lost it. Anyways, point is that LLMs are made with NLPs. NLP is pretty critical to go ahead and determine what's going on. So an NLP can take a sentence and basically determine if this sentence has negative or positive connotation to it. And because of that, it can go ahead and add a number value or a weight to that positive or negative. And then we take the positive or negative value and apply it to an overall if-then statement. If value is higher than X, send to Brad. If value is lower than Y, send to Brad alternative. And that's essentially how something like that would work. It basically works the same way that our health reading system does, where you put something in and it says you have 100 out of 100 health, and then it reads, player character was attacked and suffered a minor injury. It can tell that things like injury, right? Like that's a negative word. That is something that in its language processing is going to go ahead and tell it to assign a negative value to that. Suffered as well, and attacked. But it does have the ability to go ahead and read the context here that it's a minor injury. So at that point, it'll go ahead and probably output something like 90 out of 100 health, right? Because it's applied those weights and those values that it's gone ahead and given to those words to determine that this is a negative output. And then it's going to go ahead and run a math to determine the damage calculation based on the weights of the words in our sentence. And all that means is that it follows whatever logic you set up for it. In this case, we let really the AI determine the logic, and the way that we do that is just go, hey, what makes the most logical sense here? So it's not like rolling dice or anything like that, but it's going, hey, this is a minor injury and you have 100 health. If 0 health makes you die, then you probably only took about 10% damage, right? So we're just leveraging these same libraries, and we can use them in this case with the Brad and Brad alternative to go ahead and put positive or negative values on a character's actions. because that's really what it would have to be. It would be their actions, not their words. And then we take the positive or negative value from that, apply it to an overall if-then statement that says if you do this, go here. If you do Y, you go here. And all it does is read the numerical values and send you one of two character sheets. So I think that that's probably a way that I could do that with her if we could. I'm pretty sure we could. Oh, I didn't realize that was intentional. When I was RPing with him recently, he offered me those two choices when he hadn't before. Yeah, so those things, those choices, I didn't want users to get stuck in a loop. Like, you die and then, oh no, you just magically come back. Like, that's fine, but what if I want to come back as something cooler? What if I decide that playing the game as a human was too hard and I die and I'm like, Brad, make me an eldritch being, make me be a badass. But I also, oh man, I'm so off track now from the quest, but I don't even care. Okay, so here's my thing, okay? Dreamlands, right? This is what I want to do. I want to make the Dreamlands our intro, and then Brad just sends players back to the Dreamlands to be remade. And the Dreamlands are basically should allow for things like universe crossover, for introducing basically like non-canon characters from other universes. This is how you'll get things like I don't know, like you decide you want to be a Pokemon trainer in this world, right? The Dreamlands kind of make for a nice off-ramp to explaining the unexplainable when it comes to your character choices. So if you were in the Dreamland at this point and we're using it as a character creation device, so Dreamlands becomes character creation, where for all intents and purposes you can go ahead and, I don't know, become a satyr or a furry, for fuck's sake. Like, you could do anything and then go back to, and then go play the game. So essentially what I want to do is I want to use the Dreamlands as a character creation and intro stage. I think if we do that and we make sure that Brad's lore is tied appropriately to it with those two options, we can go ahead and essentially send players back to the Dreamlands for character creation. Now, my problem with this is that in my mind, so our characters narrate in third person, meaning they use pronouns instead of I and you identifiers. And this is important because when we're talking about character design and something like this, I don't want to use third person narration. I want to use first person narration because the benefit to using third person narration is that it's easier to roleplay with in terms of determining who and who does not feel something. So it's easier to roleplay with and only take actions for your character. That's the benefit. Because when you use identifiers like I feel X towards you and you feel X towards me, that is a definitive statement. Now, in narration, something like that can be read as, oh, this is how that character is feeling, and assumes I feel about them, right? That's one way that it can be read, but for whatever reason, in my mind, first-person narration is a little bit more assertive in telling you what's happening. So I struggle a little bit with this one because for me, it feels like it's more intuitive in this sense to have the Dreamlands narrate to you. Like, here is where you are, here is where you wake up, this is what you are initially doing and presented with. What do you want to happen from this, right? And that feels a little bit more true to like a character creator. And I've also thought about streamlining it with stuff that Bimble does, so that it works kind of like this. So you are in the Dreamlands, let's just say, and then you begin making your character, and you're given options. So option A, you're a human. Option B, you're an eldritch being. Right? And then you get more options. Option B1, which is you get purple tentacles, and option B2, which is you get blue tentacles, right? And you could go through and make a big decision tree with all of this stuff that essentially allows you to go ahead and create a character. It'll do things like give you the information that you need for filling out the user details, but could be something that I make a pin message as well with every card that allows the AI to have a better scope of who you are beyond just the user details, right? Because those are pretty narrow right now. They're essentially what Sai is doing, just a little bit more specific. So my thought is that we could go ahead and use the Dreamlands, even in first person, which is what I would really like to do, to give the emphasis that it is something out of the player's control. The problem that I have is that the rest of the game is structured in third person, which means that as an intro, this doesn't follow suit with the way the rest of the game does. And I don't know if the way that I excuse this is by introducing first person narration, like during a climax or something like that, to go ahead and bring things full circle, or maybe the epilogue. I don't know, but there has to be a tie in there, or else it's just heavily disjointed, right? So that's my biggest thing. I've been wanting to go ahead and make like a character introduction level for the longest time, but this has been the biggest roadblock, is just figuring out first or third person. How sad is that? Oh my god. I'm sitting here going, yeah, it totally makes sense as to why I haven't done that yet. And now that I'm actually explaining it out to you guys, I'm like, I feel like this is the shittiest reason not to have an actual introduction level. Oh my god. Okay. It was like a summary of the feelings or intentions of the user's message had. Yeah, basically, it didn't feel quite as good in terms of the narration, but I think we'll eventually solve this particular problem. But I do think that looping this back around with Brad would be just fucking kick-ass. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and let's take a look at Brad's stuff, and then I think after him we'll go ahead and wrap up for the day, because we've done a good amount of work and like theory crafting. We plotted out things for later dates and stuff like that. This is why I love feedback. Alright, so first entry for Brad, Mortal Guise, narrative objective. Assist Brad, the human guise of death, in understanding the complexities of human emotions and conflicts. Engage in various scenarios where Brad, as an EMT, encounters life and death situations, offering him insight into the human condition. Narrative reward is deeper user's own understanding of the delicate balance between life and death, and gain a unique perspective of the human experience through the eyes of an eternal entity. This is pretty solid. So basically adventure time with Brad, a little escort mission. I can get behind that. And the narrative reward is the banter, so that seems appropriate. Next one is going to be unusual symptoms. And this one says, examine a series of patients exhibiting unusual symptoms that resist conventional medical treatment. Ooh, narrative reward. Reveal the presence of a new strain of eldritch disease and help Brad develop an unconventional remedy. You know what? I'll let this second one go. But we're gonna tie it into to Idony because of course, that can only be curated herbs from a being called Idony. And now go ahead and wrap things back around into the black market and get everybody back into the game text from that. So these are two very different rewards. One leads you to Idony, the other leads you to more exposition. I'm good with that. That works. Okay. Now, I think since Brad has his other two built-in quests, I mean, Brad is one giant built-in quest hub, basically. That's what he's there for. I might leave these next two specifics blank, right? Because they've essentially already been written. I kind of explained to you guys how those ones work in his narration. So I think we'll leave off with that. And I'm going to leave myself a note here that says we're working on who's up next in the lineup for next week. We're looking at Cyanea. Oh boy, that's going to be fun. That's what we'll go with. All right, so we did get through a couple characters today, at least, and by a couple, I mean 3, because we're so good at this, and I didn't go off on tangents about world building or cats or trying to figure out new game levels, because why would I do anything like that? All right. Anyways, point is it's been fun. I really enjoyed this. I'm gonna go and harass some kitty cats. I'll see you guys later. Bye.